You found the skeleton. How would you tell people that was you personally? How would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on this.
Hey there, YouTube, the Dapper Dinosaur here. This is it, the conclusion to Dr. Mortenson's speech. So far, I've been amazed at how little someone can talk about the Big Bang in a talk with Big Bang in the title. But that's just me. Oh well, let's see what final bits the good doctor has for us. But before we do, make sure you have your facepalm protection ready.
But there's something else that's significant. I have noticed of all the Christians that I've interacted with or read about who accept the Big Bang, they believe what the Bible says about the future of the universe, but they don't believe what the Bible says about the past, about the origin.
The future is, conveniently, not around yet, so you can believe whatever interpretation you want, and as long as you don't put a date on it, you'll never be shown to be wrong. So it's not surprising that people have to constrain their interpretation of text to conform to what we know about the past, but that they don't really have to do so about the future. But then again, I know Christians who'd almost certainly disagree with you about what the Bible says about the future. For instance, I'll bet you believe in the rapture based on where you work. But it might surprise you to know that that's a fringe doctrine invented in the 19th century. It's unknown in Catholicism, Orthodoxy, Lutheranism, and traditional Calvinism, or at least it is denied by the officialdom of all those churches. So perhaps this agreement on biblical predictions about the future is overstated.
You see, the evolutionary view of the universe isn't consistent, of its future isn't consistent with the Bible either. In the evolutionary view, there's a couple of scenarios. One is that gravity is going to take over on that expansion, and we're going to have a big crunch.
Gravity has nothing at all to do with evolution. Can creationists please stop conflating basically all of modern science with evolution?
And then we might have another big bang, and then another big crunch, and then another big bang.
Yeah, except even when you gave this speech, we knew the universe was either flat or slightly open, and so the big crunch isn't a possibility.
Or the universe is going to keep expanding, stars are going to explode in supernovas, and eventually it's going to take a long time, so you don't need to worry about it personally, but all of the stars will become dead. The universe will become nothing but cold, random atoms.
Yep, that's probably what will happen. Although if there's a supernatural intervention to stop that, I won't complain.
But the Bible says there is going to be a heat death, but it's going to be a literal heat death. And then there's going to be a new heavens and a new earth.
Well, when the universe dies in the burning flames of a loving God, then we'll know. But since that's not exactly a predictable event, we're going to go ahead and stick with what is predictable when talking about the future. You know, the way of talking about the future that has proven more accurate than any other way of doing it.
So all the scientists have the same facts. They have the same stars and galaxies and the same planets and the same stardust. If they start with naturalistic assumptions, they come up with the Big Bang in billions of years.
Yup. When you start with the assumptions of science, science leads to the Big Bang. And since if scientific assumptions were badly flawed, it would mean that science is unreliable. And since science is obviously extremely reliable, they're good assumptions for science. Sorry that upsets your apple cart of ideas believed against the evidence.
If they start with biblical assumptions, looking at the universe, they see all kinds of evidence for design in a young universe.
No.
No scientists look at the evidence with biblical assumptions, because those assumptions, even if correct, aren't scientific. So if you start with them, what you're doing isn't science. If science ends up backing up your biblical assumptions, then bully for you, but it still wouldn't make them scientific assumptions.
The Big Bang is false because the naturalistic assumptions are false. Well, so what? Does it really matter?
Well, the Big Bang isn't false, but I mean, does it matter? To your life as a human on this rock? No, probably not. Your life would probably go on as it is now if we knew nothing about the Big Bang. On the other hand, if you have a curiosity about the universe around us and how it came to be as it is, then it matters, because it is at least broadly correct.
It does. And I want you to listen to the words of Lawrence Krauss. He's one of the most famous astrophysicists in America, professor at Arizona State University, and a very outspoken, aggressive atheist. He's speaking at he's giving a lecture at a conference for atheists, and I want you to hear what he says.
Okay, I'll listen to him. Somehow, I don't think he'll change my previous statement, though. But hey, he's smarter than I am.
The amazing thing is that every atom in your body came from a star that exploded. And the atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand. It really is the most poetic thing I know about physics. You are all stardust. You couldn't be here if stars hadn't exploded, because the elements, the carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, iron, all the things that matter for evolution, weren't created at the beginning of time. They're created in the nuclear furnaces of stars, and the only way they can get into your body is if the stars were kind enough to explode. So forget Jesus. The stars died so that you could be here today. Okay? And anyway.
So forget Jesus. The stars died so you could be here today.
So the Big Bang matters because our largely unrelated theory of nucleosynthesis allowed someone to make a joke about Jesus. I'm honestly not seeing why that means the Big Bang matters, except for purposes of satisfying intellectual curiosity.
Well, Lawrence Krauss is a very, very smart man. I'm a mental midget compared to him. But I submit to you, that is foolish arrogance.
I'm not sure telling a joke counts as arrogance. You know, not everyone who doesn't believe what you do does it because they're arrogant. And the only reason why someone might have some taboo against joking about Jesus is that they believe in him. And since most people don't, most people lack such a taboo, no matter how arrogant or not they are.
The Bible says the fool says in his heart there is no God. The fingerprints of God are all over the creation. And he doesn't know that the atoms in his left hand came from one star that exploded and the atoms in his right hand came from another star that exploded.
Yeah, that bit was put in there to emphasize the scale of the discussion. I doubt anyone took it overly literally, but then you're the type who has been shown to like to take things overly literally. So I'm not surprised you did it in this case.
I do agree with one thing he said in that statement. He said this is the most poetic thing he knows in physics. That's poetry. That's not science.
The bit about the hands in Jesus is poetry, not science. But nucleosynthesis is very much science.
Well, you remember I talked about Neil deGrasse Tyson in that Cosmos series in 2004, watched by millions of people. It's now been produced into a really classy curriculum for the public schools and used in not only this country but other countries. In the 8th episode, he says this for high school students to ponder.
Our ancestors worshipped the sun. They were far from foolish. It makes good sense to revere the sun and stars because we are their children. The silicon in the rocks, the oxygen in the air, the carbon in our DNA, the iron in our skyscrapers, the silver in our jewelry were all made in stars billions of years ago. Our planet, our society, and we ourselves are stardust.
Yeah, again, he's being poetic. I don't think he honestly thinks that humans ought to worship the stars or the sun, or that you are their biological offspring. He's just pointing out their role in nucleosynthesis, which is a prerequisite for the formation of bodies composed of relatively high-mass nuclei, like Earth.
Did you hear what he said? Our ancestors worshipped the sun. They were far from foolish. Makes good sense to revere the sun and stars because we are their children.
People worship what's important to them, and it's hard to find a culture for whom the sun wasn't important, and with good reason.
You know, you open the Bible and you read about the people of Israel, the ancient people of Israel, and you read about the New Testament times and the Greek philosophers, and these people worshipped idols. Well, you know, the Egyptians worshipped the sun. And we might, in our arrogance as modern Americans or modern 21st century citizens of Earth, we might think, how ridiculous that people worship these things. We still have idolatry going on today.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Neil deGrasse Tyson isn't worshipping the sun or actually encouraging the youth of the world to do so. It's a ball of mostly hydrogen. It doesn't care about your worship or lack thereof, and he knows that.
Well, I want to finish with one more little clip from an astrophysicist, an astronomer at NASA.
So what is human existence? How can you actually sum it up? It turns out it's really pretty simple. We are dead stars looking back up at the sky.
Dead stars looking back up at the stars. If you teach children that they're just stars that have died and exploded. If you teach them that they should worship the stars.
No one is teaching kids to worship the stars. Also, I want to point out the bad audio sync is in the original video. It's not my fault.
They're not going to come to the conclusion that they have any purpose or meaning to life. They're going to come to the conclusion, I'm the result of a long series of 13.8 billion years of time and chance and the laws of nature. I'm an accident.
No matter if there's a God or not, or if the Big Bang is true or not, or if nucleosynthesis is true or not, or if the nebular hypothesis is true or not, or how the first life formed, or if evolution is true or not, purpose must always be self-derived. Even if God had a purpose for you in mind, and if he doesn't or doesn't exist, you still have to accept purpose for yourself, or not. Purpose is the product of a mind and doesn't exist as an objective phenomenon in the world. It's not always easy to accept, but even if Christianity is true, you still need to find your purpose for existing inside you. Sure, your religion can help guide you in that, but either way, it's going to be your decision. And the sad fact is that you can choose not to have a purpose. But happily, most people don't choose that. Most of them live lives of purpose regardless of their belief in God.
There's no right or wrong. There's no God to whom I'm morally accountable.
There are many moral philosophies which do not require there to be a God, but which make claims that things are in fact moral or immoral. Really, all that's required for a moral system to be objective without a God is a goal in mind and a reasonable way to determine if various acts work for or against that goal.
Atheism is so senseless. When I look at the solar system, I see the Earth at the right distance from the sun to receive the proper amounts of heat and light. This did not happen by chance. This most beautiful system of sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent being. Who said that? A scientific ignoramus? Somebody who is just a Bible-thumping Christian who doesn't know anything? No, it was actually said by a man who is considered by many to be the greatest scientist who ever lived, Sir Isaac Newton.
Shocker! Man alive before modern discoveries in astronomy was unaware of modern discoveries in astronomy. You also know the dude drank mercury, right? In fact, he got pretty crazy late in life, quite possibly as a result of mercury poisoning. Maybe quoting someone who couldn't possibly know what we know now about how impossible the solar system is to come about naturally doesn't really matter, since he couldn't have the information to make such an assessment.
So most of the scientists say the Big Bang happened billions of years ago. Take my word for it.
No, they say, don't take my word for it. Here are mountains of observations, simulations, and confirmed predictions.
God says, I created the earth before the sun about 6,000 years ago. Take my word for it.
Well, if that's what he said, he certainly left behind every indication that it's not true, so no, I wouldn't take his word for it. But then I don't think that if a God exists, that's what he really said. Mostly because I'm not going to allow an omnipotent trickster as a possibility. Because, well, it's not pragmatic, and I'm more or less an American pragmatist philosophically.
Christians have to decide whose word they're going to take, but so do non-Christians.
Nope, they can just follow the evidence like science has, and realize that the Big Bang is as much a fact as the existence of atoms, gravity, or biological cells.
Because the question has eternal significance.
Really? Because I thought that according to you, the question with eternal significance was your acceptance of the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, not the origin of the universe, and since you can believe different things about either independently, I'm not sure how the Big Bang can be of eternal significance even in your theology. Okay, well, the rest of the speech is just preaching and then about 10 minutes of commercials for AIG products. Since I don't care about either, that's where we're going to end things. It's been a bit of a crazy journey, and I can't say I'm not glad to be moving on to something else. And that's something else my patrons on Patreon get to vote for. So if you hate what's next, blame them. But I don't think you will hate it. After all, you stuck with me through this.
Thanks for watching, but before you go, I'd like to take a minute to thank my patrons, especially my $20 patrons. Bent Hovind, Ian Chen, Bob Knob, The Evil Scotsman, Henry Hutanen, Chris Love, and Res Instance. My team over at Patreon are helping me make these videos, and I have tiers starting as low as $1 and going all the way up to $100. So if you'd like to help out the Dapper Dino channel and help make these videos better and possibly even more frequent, then why don't you head over there and check it out. If a recurring donation isn't right for you, but you'd still like to help out, I have a link to my Amazon wishlist in the description. I'm the Dapper Dinosaur.
So you found the skeleton. How would you tell people that this happens? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on this.